Some learning theory for informing ESD, Part 1. ESD learning environments are informed by diverse theory, some of which reflect similar principles, processes and progressions. Case studies and graphic models are used to explore some learning theory informing ESD in schooling, public education and other settings of transformative learning. The case studies and theory mentioned in the presentation are from Chapter 5 of the UNESCO book on issues and trends in ESD. Action learning in ESD settings. A simple 5T model for participatory action learning, ESD, is used as a referent for co-engaged learning involving participants in tuning in together, the light blue, talking about matters of concern, the purple, thinking about these as an inquiry unfolds, the yellow, touching things in hands-on experiences together, the green, and taking action together to resolve the issues at hand, the brown. Now, of course, around any nexus of concern, these can happen simultaneously and can happen in any order without being linear. ESD didactic theory and the Sustainable Development Goals. Some didactic theories are better than others. The challenge is to work with the theory that is most informative for the learning actions in which you are involved. Key didactic tools for ESD are the Global Goals 2030, or the SDGs as we know them. These are deployed in two main ways: goals or targets to be achieved through ESD, and for evaluating the scope of matters of concern. The first is common in institutional settings when ESD didactics serve to achieve specific or specified outcomes. The second is where participants use the SDGs as a tool to deepen and guide their co-engaged work on environment and sustainability concerns. Let's look at the Sustainable Development Goals with the wheel. For local depth inquiry, there's always a nexus of concern, and people get together to actually explore and investigate that concern. So the context and a description of it is very important, along with the main focus of concerns that people face in their daily lives or in the situation in which they're in. Then you can go to the SDGs and see how these relate to the global goals. Summarize these around what you know, and then raise questions and ideas in a continuing ongoing investigation. An overview of learning theory. Most of the theory originates in the North as empowering forms of transformative learning. Some is from the South, notably the liberation and literacy pedagogy of the oppressed, after Paulo Freire, that challenged the colonizing and oppressive conditions of his time. Today, much of his work is read as a pedagogy for transformation and empowerment, but his concern was for liberation from the marginalizing oppression in colonial modernity that is still with us today. The language change here, emancipation to empowerment, mutes the cultural histories of social, ecological, economic and political conditions as matters of concern that we hope to resolve through ESD as co-engaged processes of learning-led change. The language that we use is important. Close attention to language we use in ESD is critical to avoid masking and overwriting pedagogy for transformative learning to liberate us from the conditions developing in the modern day. For example, the idea of target groups has widely fallen away, and participants and interest groups have displaced the earlier language of development education. Today, in co-engaged approaches to ESD, we commonly speak of ESD competencies. These refer to knowledge, dispositions, and the capacity to act together in ways that enable participants in ESD to recognize concerns, assess value, and act on emerging matters of concern. Specifying competences needs care. Many writers on competency approaches refer to Amartya Sen's work, forgetting that he was critical of abstract competency specification. He made a strong case for the alternative concepts of capabilities. This is not a subtle academic distinction, as many communities with high competence are marginalized in ways that disallow them from manifesting the competence that they might acquire in an ESD training course, for example. He thus proposes that we talk about valued knowings, beings, and doings as capabilities that people are able to acquire and deploy, recognizing that contexts of change require more than the competencies specified in ESD, in a course of study. Theory and context of ESD are diverse. The range of theory mentioned in the UNESCO paper can be identified in case studies of transformative learning, in numerous case studies. First, a field center expanding into global citizenship education and ESD context of learning. 2, course-activated ESD change projects. 3, intergenerational multimedia-activated ESD with youth in a community context. Ethics-led ESD in school subject disciplines. 5, a sustainability commons ESD innovation process. 6, ESD in whole school action learning. And 7, co-engaged evaluative action research in ESD in regional centers of expertise. These cases are all explored in the paper, and they reflect diverse theory informing co-engaged active learning that is cyclical and iterative in nature when compared to the earlier approaches of interventions to create awareness, change values and attitudes, and to produce behavior change. Part 2 models the learning theory in the core paper to go with these case studies.